Friends, welcome to the Nashadaka channel. In this video, I want to briefly tell you which plants we will start sowing for seedlings as early as February. That is, the new plant growing season will begin soon. But before I talk about these plants, name them, and show their photos, I want to explain the conditions in which we will be growing the seedlings of these plants, because this is extremely important. We will start sowing in a mini-type greenhouse. I've talked about it before, but there will be another video about it. I will show what it looks like, what it consists of, and which lamps we will use for lighting, because it's important if you are growing seedlings indoors to have additional artificial lighting so that the seedlings don't get leggy. We will talk separately later about how to provide lighting. So we will be sowing on the rack in this little greenhouse, heating it to the appropriate temperatures to get good germination. Then we will provide lighting for these seedlings so that they don't become leggy. And around the beginning of April, we will take these seedlings from the room to the daka. We have a small, bright seedling house made of polycarbonate there. And in this seedling house, we will continue growing our seedlings. So do you have a mini greenhouse? Because you can't just replace a mini greenhouse with a windowsill. And also, if you don't have the right lamps for supplemental lighting, it will be very hard for the plants to survive in such conditions. So once again, I want to say, maybe it's better to consider slightly later sowing dates. Don't rush, don't hurry. It's not a problem if by the time of transplanting the seedlings are a bit smaller. They will still be much higher quality than if at transplanting your seedlings are overgrown, stretched out, weak, thin, and have lost their quality. This is the introductory note that absolutely had to be mentioned before telling you which plants we will start sowing in February. Roughly speaking, these are plants that require quite a long vegetation period. We start with trailing petunia. We always sow trailing petunia earlier. Then perhaps we will also propagate it a bit by cuttings, and in this way we will multiply it. After all, the seeds of trailing petunia are quite expensive, so propagating by cuttings is a simple exercise. You can take cuttings and propagate it, getting 20 or 30 identical plants from a single seed. So, as for trailing petunia, we will start sowing it. I'll list these plants now, around the 5th to 7th of February. Zonal and ivy-leaved pelargonium are also plants that require quite a long development period. They need to be sown a bit earlier. Gazania, you can start sowing it around mid-February. You can start sowing gazania at the end of February. You can even start sowing gazania at the beginning of March. We will start a bit earlier so that by the beginning of May, it will already be blooming for us. Next, osteospermum. This is also a flower for those who appreciate it. We will start sowing it in February. You can also start sowing delphinium. This year, we won't be sowing delphinium for seedlings because last year we grew a lot of seedlings. Now half of our summer house is already occupied by delphinium. It's a very beautiful flower, but anyone who wants to can give it a try. Delphinium is very easy to grow from seed. All types of begonias can also be started from seed in the second half of February. You can even sow them in the first half of February as well. And they don't get leggy, they are shade tolerant. So the seedlings grow well indoors and develop nicely. And both the small dwarf ever-blooming begonias and these Grand Lux varieties also handle a lack of light very well. Periwinkle can be started, Catharanthus also sown. Catharanthus needs a warm temperature, quite high, to develop well. This must be taken into account when growing seedlings. Dichondra. Be sure to sow in the first half of February. Sow dichondra. In my opinion, it's the best trailing plant and the easiest to grow. A very beautiful plant that we have grown, are growing, and will continue to grow. Bacopa, a trailing plant, also beautiful. Tiny little flowers that look beautiful both in hanging pots and even just in flower beds or on something tall like that. You can start sowing carnations in the second half of February as well, or you can start sowing them in March. It develops rather slowly, but still you can start a bit later too. Well, for example, it will bloom not at the beginning of May, but at the end of May. So, friends, these are the flowers we will start sowing in February. You might ask, what about vegetables? We won't be sowing vegetables yet. Why? Because we don't have the right conditions to plant these vegetables so early. We once sowed peppers for open ground at the end of February. But peppers, These wonderful plants typically have a rather extended growing period of 65 to 70 full days if you choose to grow them in pots. So with that in mind, just do the simple math. If you carefully sow them on, let's say the 20th of February, for example, by the 1st of May, it'll be ready. But can you plant it out in the open ground on the 1st of May? Of course not, because it's a heat-loving plant and it'll just freeze and suffer there. And we'll just watch it struggle in the open ground, even if we try to cover it. It's not going to get any warmer out there. Yes, it won't freeze, but it'll suffer. The plant will just stand there yellowish and pale. That's why we don't sow peppers, tomatoes, or especially cucumbers in February. Those people who grow these crops commercially or who have the right conditions to later transplant the peppers or tomatoes into a heated greenhouse, of course, already know when to sow them. They have the facilities, they plan everything out, and they take this seriously. Right now, I'm talking about these plants from the perspective of an ordinary gardener or summer resident, someone who doesn't want to spend too much time, effort, or money on growing plants, but does it for pleasure. For those who grow for commercial purposes, of course, things might be completely different. So, my dear friends, that's precisely what I truly wanted to share with all of you today. So, if you genuinely want to grow beautiful plants without putting too much undue strain or excessive effort on yourself, I still strongly suggest you absolutely stick to these wonderful methods, and we can certainly grow them together, or even thoughtfully postpone it a little bit if that is truly needed. If you don't currently have a really nice little indoor greenhouse setup or perhaps some effective grow lights and so on, then these methods are especially helpful. I've talked about that. Just reminding you once again, I wish you all successful sowing, good sprouts and healthy plants. Wishing you strong health personally and of course peaceful skies for all of us. That's where I'll end this video. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.